भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। We have a couple of clarifications. We will take that clarifications. Venkatachalam is asking, performance of karma with attachments creates merit, demerit that results in a cycle of birth and death. I heard from our discussions that the doer is not the intellect, mind, body complex, and Brahman is the doer. Question 1. Who then goes through the cycle of birth and death for the merits or demerits? Question number 2. If Brahman and Athman refer to the same reality, why do we call the reality by two different names? Now, answering the first clarification. In a very loose way, in one of the contexts of the right bhavana, we said Brahman, God is the doer. Now, that's not a very strict definition. That is not the strict definition. For Brahman is not the doer. Brahman is the witnessing enlivener. The definition of Brahman is Shuddha Sakshi Chaitanya. Pure witnessing enlivener is what God is all about. That's what the definition of, we can't call it as definition of God again. We only talk about in a very general way, in a very loose way. So, whenever we talk about the doership in an action, in the context of how to eliminate the doership, I gave three, four angles to it. To understand that how to eliminate the sense of doership that one has. So in that context, I said in a very loose way, you are not the doer, but then we need to know somebody is the doer. No, either we have to say nature is the doer, or we have to say God is the doer, or we have to say but wherever there is an action, there has to be wherever you see an action, there has to be a doer behind it. For there cannot be a karma without a karta. There cannot be a karma without a karta is the formula. Wherever you see an action, there has to be a doer behind it. Now, the idea in Karma Yoga is the doership. The entire idea of Karma Yoga, the entire idea of Yajna Karma is dealing with doership. So, in that context, in a very loose way, I said Brahman is not the, Brahman is the doer. In the strict sense, don't take it like that. In the context of I am not the doer, contrastingly, the statement was made. But strictly speaking, it's a wrong statement. Because, strictly speaking, it's a wrong statement. Because Brahman is Suddha Sakshi Chaitanya, pure witnessing enlivener, pure witnessing consciousness is what Brahman is all about. So, correct. Who goes through that? The body doesn't go through that. The mind and intellect complex goes through the cycle of, this mind and intellect complex goes through the cycle of Punarjanma. Just as some karma of the past created this embodiment and this environment and all that, what I am doing now will naturally carry forward into the into the future. What I am having now is because of the past karma. Similarly, what I am doing now is creating karmas for the future. Now, who's going through this? The mind-intellect complex is going through it, which is what in some other context I called it as jiva. So, who goes through this? The jiva goes through this cycle of punarjanma. In the second chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, from verses 11 to 20, he talks about this. Vasansi jirnani yata vihaya navani grinnati naroparani tata sharirani vihaya jirnani anyani samyati navani dehi. He uses the word dehi there. Dehi means the one who is occupied the deha. The one who has occupied the deha. So, he brings in a very subtle distinction. So, he doesn't say that deha is going through that. He says that dehi is going through that. So, you can call it as dehi, you can call it as subtle body component, you can call it as jiva. In different contexts, we use different terminologies. But concept remains the same. So, yeah, is it okay? Yeah. The second question. Why, if Brahman and Athman refer to the same reality, why do we call the reality by two different names? We give two different names for identity purposes, for our sake. Space is one entity. This is the Upanishadic example. It's not my example. Space is one entity. With reference to not contained by anything, we call it as space. The moment that space is contained by something, like a pot, we call it as pot space. So, Brahman is equal to space, Atman is equal to pot space. Now, space per se, there is no difference between pot space and the total space. Space is indivisible. Space cannot be distinguished like that. But yet we give these two names because in the practice of nididhyasana, in the practice of contemplation, Abhyasa Vakya says, I am Atma Brahma. This Atman is Brahman. This Atman is Brahman. Pot space is total space. Pot space is total space. And then in the Anubhava Vakya, in the fourth stage, he doesn't call it as Atma. He call it as Aham Brahma Asmi. He doesn't say Aham Atma Asmi. He says I am Aham Brahma Asmi. So Brahman and Atman refers to the same reality. The two different names in relation to the identity. Brahman in relation to totality, Atman in relation to the individual. When the consciousness is enlivening that individual in that perspective, it will be called as Atman. When the same consciousness enlivened with the totality, it would be called as Brahman. The difference between Brahman and Atman is like the difference between pot space and total space. Pot space is in relation to the pot. Even in relation to the pot, space still remains the same. The pot cannot trap the space, no? Pot is in relation, even though we call it as pot space, space per se cannot be captured by the pot. The walls of the pot cannot divide the space, even though it appears to be so. So that is the connection between Brahman and Atman. Is it okay, sir? Now, Sriram. Last week we talked about the guy who dropped the atomic bomb and how he tried to kill himself. You mentioned that it was ego and heightened self of doership, lack of objectivity that led him to it. Why do you think it's not his conscience that resulted in this guilt, but rather was his ego? Since he is not a decision maker, he should forgo what his inner voice is making him feel. Isn't that why soldier suffers from PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder? They kill because what's demanded, that's what is demanded, but it does damage internally. Correct. PTSD. Over the last week, I wouldn't say over the last week, quite some time, quite a few people I am talking about this PTSD. And PTSD is what is happening to children after writing the exams. PTSD is what is happening to kids after they finish their exams. And I say, where is the battle that you went there? What is the fight that what is it that you saw there? Now, apart from that, so this PTSD is such a common thing nowadays. Now, coming back to that atomic bomb fellow, first thing is the conscience functions with knowledge and understanding. Conscience should not function by conditioning. There is a difference between conscience and conditioning. Most of the time, this conditioning is misunderstood or overlapped into the word conscience. Now, conscience is that which functions through knowledge and understanding. What is the knowledge and understanding? As a soldier, I do not go into the merits of the war. I don't decide whether war should happen or not. That is not for the soldier to do. It is for the state to decide whether they should go for the war or not. The state decides it, the soldier executes it. So now conscience says, stick to my role. Why do I overlap that role? What is the role? As a soldier, I need to obey the orders of the state. That is why in the olden days, we had a separate group of people called Kshatriya, where when they kill, their conscience will not prick them. Today, most of the soldiers are not Kshatriya types. They just go for it for other reasons. That's why they are having this difficulty. In fact, if I were to be the army general, first lesson I will teach them is this. First lesson I will teach them is we have no reason to feel this way, because this is what we are supposed to. This is what we are supposed to do. So the conscience functions through knowledge and understanding, or it is a knowledge and understanding that directs the conscience itself. Now I will define what conscience is. Generally speaking, people define conscience means that which says what is right, what is wrong. Killing is wrong. Ahimsa paramo dharma, it says. The supreme dharma is ahimsa. Advesha sarvabhutana maitra karunevacha. In the 35 qualities, he glorifies ahimsa. In the 20 virtues, he glorifies ahimsa. In the 26 qualities of the Daivi Sampat, again now, on the one side, it is spoken like this. On the other side, in the second chapter, not in the second chapter, In the first chapter, Arjuna tells Krishna, place the chariot in between the two armies so that I can see them very clearly. Who are all is there, what is their positions, so that I can make my strategy. So place the chariot in between the two armies. And what Krishna did, he went and placed the chariot in front of Bhishma and Drona. If Krishna has placed the chariot in front of Duryodhana and Dushasana, battle would have started. Bhagavad Gita discourse would not have happened at all. Now Krishna went and placed the chariot in front of Bhishma and Drona. So symbolic is that. And what is that? Bhishma and Drona represents the category of a soldier. What is the category of the soldier? The category of the soldier is this. The soldier doesn't decide when to go to war or when to retreat, even though he is the one who is executing. Like the nurse in the hospital doesn't decide. Whatever she is told to do, that's what she. Though she is the one who is doing most of the job. The doctor comes only for 10 minutes, no? It is the nurse that is sitting there for 24 hours. She is the one who is administering everything. But she cannot decide anything. Even though she can say, I know more than the doctor, I am there, all this doesn't apply to the conscience. Conscience says, what is your role? Who are you? Nurse. Who are you? Soldier. Stick to that role. This is how conscience functions. But what happens is, mind takes over after a while. When the mind takes over, these complications arise. What are the complications? The complications of he takes a responsibility over the action. He takes that responsibility over the action for which he is not responsible. That exaggeration, the mind picks it up. So we say it is not conscience functioning. We say it is the mind functioning. Why? Because to discuss whether to be bombed or not, to discuss what kind of bomb has to be used, to discuss what kind of things has to be used, all this is not for the soldier to decide. As I gave the example of why the chariot was placed in front of Bhishma and Drona. Bhishma and Drona is symbolic of not that they are in agreement with Duryodhana. Not that they are in agreement with Duryodhana. But then that's what they ought to do as a soldier. So they are standing there ready to fight. Arjuna, emulate them and fight. Follow their example and fight. Now, if you do not follow their example, what happened? You should see verse 23 of chapter 1 and verse 27 of chapter 1. Rende moone versada. Where Arjuna says, I want to see the enemies clearly. I want to see them clearly to fight. And in verse number 27 of chapter 1, he says, father-in-law, brother-in-law, uncle, and all that he starts talking. He has personalized it. The moment he personalized it, he is no more a soldier. Similarly, here this man has personalized it. What is the personalizing? He has crossed the boundary of the role has a boundary, and he has crossed that boundary. Conscience is that which says, why are you crossing that boundary? You should feel guilty only if you have not dropped the bomb. You need not feel guilty to have dropped the bomb. You should have felt guilty only if you hadn't dropped it. And when Bhishma and Drona were fighting, that's where even today people have this debate club discussion. Yeah, eternally they keep debating. How can Bhishma and Drona, great personal, fight for Duryodhana's side? And the way in which they fought, the sincerity with which they fought, the dedication with which they fought, even Pandavas couldn't do that. Why this confusion? It's not the problem of conscience versus conviction. It is the problem of doership versus conviction. It is not the problem of conscience versus doing. It is the problem of lack of right understanding. What is the lack of right understanding? As a soldier, what am I supposed to do? I am commanded to do it. I do it. He is not able to restrict it there. His thinking has gone beyond the scope.
So Aravindan uncle, how did you define conscience again? Thiruppi and the definition solrala.
Yeah, again I'll define. Yes, conscience is that which directs a person to the higher values with understanding.
So, in this case, okay. There's about 2 years ago, I saw this documentary. It was called Soldiers of Conscience.
Yes.
4 American soldiers basically, in one sense, disregarded the orders and acted in accordance with their conscience. And this documentary became a rave hit because it sparked a huge debate within the army community out here in the US. One of the persons said something very interesting. They from them, this position called as a conscientious objector, one who's objecting to this thing through a certain sense of conscience. A designation was given to such a soldier within the US Army called as a conscientious objector. What he said was like what you said. In the case of Arjuna, I feel like Arjuna sadly didn't see that he was fighting a dharmic war or a righteous war. And when he had someone like a Krishna on his side, the Lord himself, it should have been easy for him. But in today's day and world, you don't have a Krishna like stalwart leading the war or saying this war is right. You have another fool in the form of a politician who's causing a war. So you don't even know whether fundamentally this war is dharmic or not, unlike Krishna or Arjuna's war.
Perfectly correct.
The second thing is, what he was saying was in that documentary, as a conscientious objector, people would say, if you had been a conscientious objector, would Hitler have been stopped in World War II? Instead, if you didn't do your duty, would Hitler have been stopped? Adiki, he said something very interesting. He said, if the soldiers in the Nazi army had become conscious objectors, like Drona and Bhishma, they wouldn't have stood by Hitler and he wouldn't have been successful. He wouldn't have conquered so many places if people in soldiers in his own army had a conscience and laid down their arms and said, I wouldn't fight for you.
Correct.
So there's an interesting point that he's bringing up.
If every individual starts thinking and deciding like this, there cannot be a...
But conscience is not your voice, the voice of your
There
Atma from
cannot
within.
be. Now, the first thing, as you are discussing this, I remember seeing this documentary long back. One of my friends sent me the link and I saw that. As you are discussing, I was first when you said I couldn't recollect. Now when you said about this thing and all that, I could recollect. Now, what is the definition of conscience? Conscience is that which points out to something higher. Now, the statement is very good. What is higher? Who is qualified to decide what is higher? What is the universal definition of accepting something as higher? Now, when we get into these things don't exist anymore.
Right.
When we start up to, if we don't analyze that statement and take the statement per se by itself, there is no problem. But then, if we go into a deeper analysis, it comes to a point where Krishna himself is called adharmic and he was condemned to hell. In the Jainist literature, Krishna is seen as the adharmic person and he is condemned to hell. Because how can he participate in a war like that? Now that side of literature is not exposed to us at all. And I have read that, and I have, because I want to do it for myself with clarity. So I read that literature also. And the logic and reason that they give exactly the same thing. Now, conscience in relation to the higher must be guided by what? We have, that's why Vedanta defines Dharma in two different ways. One is known as Sadharana Dharma. Sadharana Dharma means general principles. Another kind of Dharma is Asadharana Dharma. Asadharana Dharma is where it refers to the individual, the time, the place, the situation, and so many factors comes in. For conscience to guide rightly, it should be backed by knowledge and understanding. What should be the knowledge and understanding? What is Sadharana Dharma and what is Asadharana Dharma? What is the Dharma? What is the Dharma of each and every role? So when you combine all these factors together and then you come to an understanding, this problem will not arise. Otherwise, what happens is it's a clash of, they take the Sadharana Dharma and it is connected with a Dharma which is purely situational. And any kind of righteousness that we are talking about is always, any kind of righteousness that we are talking about always carries this notion, carries this difficulty of what? When you look at it from another angle, it is always bound to be
wrong.
It is always bound to be wrong. Correct. It is always bound to be wrong. Therefore, how does one decide then? How does one live life without guilt then? How does one do their duties then? It says, understand your role, understand the Dharma within the scope of that role, function within that role, then you are free of this.
But then you have always said that sin is not in the action but in the reaction.
Correct.
So
Exactly.
intrinsically, if I feel guilted about what I have done, for example, you told me that now when I'm doing animal research, I never thought about, or I didn't have the sensitivity to the animals to the extent that you brought about. That created a sense of, oh, tappu pandrome. So that is because of my heightened sense of awareness and because I'm a lot more sensitive now. So as
Because,
a result of your knowledge.
because
But then
the Dharma of the researcher is to do that, not the Dharma of the soldier to do this. We are mixing up two roles. The researcher, the person who's doing research, has to do this. It is his Dharma to do this. If he is not doing this, if he is not doing this, then he is not following his Dharma. Now what is the Dharma of the soldier? What is the role of the soldier? We can't mix up the roles and the Dharma. We can't mix it up. If we mix it up, it will be an eternal debate club discussion only. The role of the researcher is this. The role of a soldier is this. The role of a teacher is this. The role of a student is this. Now, the Dharma is the conscience. I'm still defining conscience. The conscience has to be in relation to the function of the conscious is in relation to the role. It cannot be a general thing. For if it takes a general thing, we can get into absurdities in logic. We can get into absurdities in functioning. What is absurdity in functioning? It's like saying even you are killing plants also, no. Killing animals is wrong means he's not killing plants also wrong, and then they'll come and say no, it doesn't have a nervous system, and then they will come and say no, how do you say that? Now there will be an endless debate, which is the subject matter of thinkers. Now who should do this debate? Who should do this debate? The thinkers must sit and do this. A soldier should not. If the soldier is doing this, if a soldier has started to think, first thing what he should do, he should not be in the 8th standard NCC selection school. So they were asking who are all wants to join NCC. I also want to join. My class teacher said, why are you going? I said, no, I also want to go and join. Okay. I wanted to prove my teacher wrong. For that reason only I went and joined NCC. First day, the senior, who do you call the senior fellow as? I don't know who are the senior. I forgot the name of the senior fellow there. He said, 5 round sutti varanu ground. We all started running. Halfway through the 3.5, he blew the whistle and said stop. Odna 15 பேர்ல 13 பேர் stopped. 2 of us turned back and said, இன்னும் 1.5 round பாக்கி இருக்குது. He said, 2 more rounds for you, he said. 2 more rounds for you. Why? Because even if I say 5 rounds and you start running, if I say stop at the 4th round, you have to stop. If you don't do that, you are not fit. Another 2 round odi 2 நாளைக்கு நடக்க முடியல. I couldn't walk for 2 days. My teacher said, Nanda sonnena, you go and all your vaai vechi ni summa irukka matta. Why did you go? Why did you go there? Now, inside, after a long time, I understood that field is not for me. It's not that the field is wrong. Who is qualified for that? If my conscience has to function rightly, I need to know that this is the field of activity, and this field of activity is bound by some certain rules and regulations, and I need to abide by the rules and regulations. I can debate about it, I may not agree with it, I can fight it, I can change it. All that is allowed. Not sitting inside that role. I can become a thinker, and then come out and do all that. Vedanta is not saying don't do that. A thinker, if he goes into the army, he will find it difficult. His conscience will prick. Because he is, of the 15 fellows, only me and another fellow. I don't even remember who that other, he is not my friend also. Maybe from some other class, another fellow. நாங்க ரெண்டே பேர் தான் நின்னுட்டு திருப்பி கேட்டோம். இன்னும் 1.5 round பாக்கி இருக்குதேடா, we said. The fellow said, oh, பதில் சொல்றியா நீ? இன்னொரு 2 round ஓடு. So we have to go for another 2 more rounds. We look like so the conscience is that which says you have the perfect freedom to question, to think and do all that. That freedom is not taken away. But for the conscience to function, it needs a boundary. Thinking gets organized only when there is a boundary. Conscience needs that boundary. If conscience is not given that boundary, what happens? We go. If conscience is not given that boundary, mind goes in various directions, and it will pick up from very many things. To conclude, why it is a problem is because predominantly the human beings are emotional thinkers. We are not dispassionate thinkers. We are all emotional thinkers, mostly. So in all our thinking, emotion comes and emotion flavors that thinking, colors that thinking. Conscience is nothing but a dispassionate thinking.
Yeah. So I think again, now I was thinking conscience was the voice of the Athman, or of the Lord within, and you should train yourself to listen to your conscience because it will always be right.
Correct.
But நீங்க சொல்ற definition லேந்து I have to still sit and understand it better. Correct. But one thing I wanted to ask you was, அப்படி இருந்ததுன்னா, if that is the role of a soldier is not to question. For example, then these changes, like earlier they used to use torture as a means to extract information. Now some soldier would have outed after he tortured someone, this is inhumane. And then now it is a crime to torture someone or do waterboarding. Correct. So otherwise there would have been no reforms if no soldier had any conscience. Correct. But because of the soldiers who had some conscience, there are some positive reforms even when it comes to code of conduct of killing.
It's a wrong word to say conscience. He started thinking. Of the Why? 100 soldiers who were doing that, 2 fellows started thinking. And it is the thinking that brought about this transformation. But he need not feel guilty that he tortured 90 before. That is the difference. Are you able to follow? The 2 fellows have started thinking now. They came out and they brought in the changes. Now that they have brought in the changes, they need not feel guilty and try to commit suicide that they did torture 90 fellows before that.
Okay, I get it.
Is it okay?
It's very subtle, but I get it.
Yeah, it is a bit subtle, but easily graspable only. It's not that difficult. Seriya?
Okay. Thank you.
I congratulate myself. No, the whole idea is this. Thinking is allowed. Reforming happens only through thinking. These fellows were all thinkers. That's why they came out. See, like some of the fellows, what is that? That Cuban reform things. I saw all these videos. You know that the 2 fellows, the soldiers came out and reported, and the whole thing got dismantled and all that. Now they are the thinkers. And when they do that, they need not feel guilty. That's the whole catch. The formula is this: human beings evolve in knowledge and understanding. Now that you have got some clarity, I'm giving you the formula for thinking. The wise man of the present should not punish the ignorant man of the past. The wise man of the present should not punish the ignorant of the past. That's the formula. Now that he has understood it as wrong, he need not whip himself for what he did in the past. This is getting emotional about it. Are you able to see the distinction now?
Correct.
So the formula is this: since human beings, knowledge keeps on, the horizon of knowledge goes on increasing and increasing and increasing. With the improved knowledge, my past always looks wrong. And they say, Nadi Moolam, Rishi Moolam, Pakudadu, they say. Because if you see it with the heightened awareness, with the heightened knowledge, if you analyze your own past, 10 out of 10 things, 9 will be wrong only. But then getting emotional about it is what leads to all this. That's where Vedanta comes and says, now that your awareness has increased, your knowledge quotient has increased, don't punish yourself for your past. One. Second is, you punishing is going to create another vicious cycle of the same problem again. That is why we say, yes, acceptance. I was ignorant in the past, I did it. Now that I am wise, I will not allow it to happen anymore. I will fight for it. I will stand for it. I will give up my life for that. But I will not feel guilty and punish myself for my past. This is the very subtle. This is a very subtle difference.
It's a hard thing to practice, though I understand the subtlety. It is to be that dispassionate.
Yes,
is hard. Very hard.
It is hard. Adukada in the 12, which is what how to get this dispassion is what Krishna is struggling to explain in 650 verses. Because it is not easy. We are not saying it is easy. We are not saying it is difficult. Just as balancing in that 1-inch seat, theoretically so difficult, before you learn how to cycle. You bring in the physics, you bring in the law, you bring in everything. And how can you balance in that 1 inch? How can you balance in that 1-inch seat? And once you have learnt it, it is difficult. And intellect is that which would make it possible. I'm not saying easier. Intellect is that which will make it possible. Effort is the same, but intellect would make it possible. Seriya? Yeah. Now, Jiva or Brahman, Mohan is asking, is Jiva or Brahman are different? Yes. Jiva is the individual. Brahman is the pure consciousness. Jiva is the individual. Brahman is the pure consciousness. There is a difference.
Okay, sir.
Is it okay, Mogan?
Okay, sir. Okay.
Yeah.
Because we use the God, Athman, Brahman, truth, Jiva also in the synonymously. So I am
Correct.
having that doubt whether it is same or different.
It is different. It is different.
Okay.
Jiva is different. Jiva refers to the individual.
Okay. Okay.
Brahman refers to the pure consciousness, enlivening factor.
Can I say it is a pot space? Jiva is a kind of...
Jiva is the pot.
Okay.
Jiva is not the pot space. Jiva is the pot.
Okay, okay.
Jiva is the pot. Don't say Jiva is the pot space. That is wrong. Jiva is
Okay,
the
okay.
pot. Just as even though the pot has a form, that pot cannot contain the space. Even though perceptibly it looks like the pot has trapped the space.
Okay.
So you can't say pot space is Jiva. You should say
Pot is space.
pot is Jiva.
Sorry, pot is the, yeah.
Pot is Jiva.
Okay, okay.
Space, the space outside the pot and the space inside the pot is one and the same. The
Correct.
Jiva is the pot.
Okay, okay.
Seriya?
Okay.
Pot space is not Jiva. Pot is the Jiva.
Okay, okay.
Okay?
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Bala. Brahman and Athman will exhibit differently as long as there is an existence of Upadhi. The moment Upadhi disappears, the space is unified. Brahman and Athman will exhibit differently as long as there is an existence of Upadhi. Bala. Brahman and Atman do not exhibit differently. Your perception of it is different. Brahman and Atman, they don't exhibit differently. They are one and the same. It is the Upadhi that brings in an apparent difference. So there is no difference between the two. You can't say Brahman and Atman will exhibit differently. They appear to be different. Just as pot space appear to be different from the total space. And space has got nothing to do with the pot. The coming of the pot, space doesn't get diminished. The destruction of the pot, the space doesn't get purified. Either way, space remains in its own pure form. But the upadhis means, just for those people who doesn't know the Sanskrit, upadhis means equipments. Upadhi means equipments. The moment the equipment disappears, the space appears to be unified. That which appears to be divided appears to be unified. So both are the problem of the appearance. Both is of the appearance, not of the real. Clear?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, it's clear.
Yes. Just now you referred Jiva is mind intellect complex. Does it include ego? Yes. The subtle part, the subtle body is of four: Mano, Buddhi, Chitta, Ahankar. For all practical purposes, we talk about these two components of mind and intellect. Though the other two is always included in that. So Jiva, the subtle body, is of Mano, Buddhi, Chit, Ahankar. Mano means Manaha, mind. Buddhi, intellect. Chit means the awareness of everything. The fourth is Ahankar. Ahankar means seeing myself separate from others is Ahankar. The sense of separation that one feels in relation to the other is what? Aham means I, the I-ness. So which is ego. So whenever we talk about Jiva, we talk about this. So it includes Mano, Buddhi, Chit, Ahankar. Seriya? I remember I am Jiva and not body. If you can remember that you are the Jiva, if only you can remember that you are the Jiva, you have moved from Karma Yogena Yoginam level to Jnana Yogena Sankyanam type. If only a person can remember that he is the Jiva. Lokesmin in chapter 3, verse number 3. Lokesmin Dvida Nishta Pura Prokta Mayanaga Jnana Yogena Sankyanam Karma Yogena Yoginam. The two categories of people. The yogis and the jnanis. The moment I realize that I am a Jiva, I switch over to the category of Jnani. Is it wrong to say that I remember that I am Jiva and not body? When spiritual development doesn't happen at all, the person says, Aham Sharira. At the second stage, he says, I am not the Sharira, I am the Jiva. At the height, he says, I am not the Sharira, I am not the Jiva, I am Brahma. So, from Aham Sharira to Aham Jiva to Aham Brahma. So, three stages of development. Aham Sharira Asmi, Aham Jiva Asmi, Aham Brahma Asmi. Aham Jiva Asmina, I am this body. And everything connected to the body is what is me. Then I say Jiva. The moment I say Jiva, then I become like Rama in Yoga Vasishta. How many fathers I have had in the past, Dasharatha, you don't know. How many more fathers I am going to have in the future, you don't know. How many mothers I have known, how many mothers I have had in the past, you don't know. How many more wombs I am going to occupy in the future, you don't know. This is the discussion of the Jiva. To that Jiva, the Guru comes and says, even thinking that you are Jiva is also wrong. Just as how you thought that Aham Sharira is wrong, you thinking that you are Jiva is also wrong. Then who are you in essence? Then who are you? Tat. Tat Tvamasi Shvetaketu. Tat Tvamasi Shvetaketu. You are that. You are that. Vedanta is always into these two words, Tvam and Tat. Shankaracharya goes to the extent of defining Vedanta as nothing but Tvam Pada Vichara, Tat Pada Vichara. Enquiry into what is this you, enquiry into what is Tat. What is Tat, that? What is Tvam, you? This is what the entire knowledge of Vedanta is all about, he says. Therefore, you are not wrong to say I am Jiva. It is one stage. It is one stage. One stage is to say Aham Sharira. Another stage is to say Aham Jiva. Because it is the Jiva that goes through this Punarjanma. It is this Jiva that goes through this Punarjanma. Occupies one body, stays in this body for a while and leaves this body to occupy another body. Nature's blessing is apohanam, loss of memory. Nature's blessing is loss of memory. In the 15th chapter, he says, apohanam, loss of memory I am giving you, Arjuna. Because of that, you are all right, he says. What is the loss of memory? When I come into a new body, all the memories of the past body is wiped out completely, and it appears to be as though it has descended fresh for the first time. It appears to be so. In the Upanishad called Garbha Upanishad, there is an Upanishad called Garbha Upanishad. Garbha means that Upanishad talks about the entire process of the getting into the womb and what happens in the womb and what happens when you come out of the womb and all that. That Upanishad is called Garbha Upanishad. In that Garbha Upanishad, he says, as the Jiva, as the body is preparing itself to come out of the womb, the jiva takes a vow, a pratignya it takes. What is the pratignya it takes? This is the last time I am occupying. This is going to be the last time. No more of this wombs again and again and again. But then what happens is, in the pain that it takes to come out of the womb, as soon as it come out of the womb, it forgets. What it forgets? It forgets that it is the jiva and completely identifies with the body. It forgets that it is the jiva and completely identifies with this body, and this identification with the body continues till that guy leaves the body. Elsewhere in Bhagavad he says, Punarapi Jananam, Punarapi Maranam, again birth, again death, again birth, again death. Why are now who's going through this? In the second chapter of the Gita, he says, Arjuna, you are only killing the bodies. You can't kill the jiva. What are you worried about killing? Can you kill the jiva? Jiva can be killed only through jnanam. That you can't do. If jiva can be killed, Shankaracharya could have killed all our jivas straight away. We all would have become enlightened. So the jiva cannot be killed. Only the body can be killed. Killing the body, you think they are going to die. They are not going to die. Leaving this, they are going to. You are going to continue. They are going to continue. I know all this, Arjuna. You don't know any of this. Chapter 2 is such a. In chapter 2, he gives the formulas succinctly, and then he develops these formulas. That is why right from 3rd chapter to the 18th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, we always connect to the formulas that is given in chapter 2. So, I am the jiva. You can say that. But to remember that I am the jiva, you need Vedanta Shastra to come and tell you that Punarjanma is there, the law of karma is there. It explains all that and gives you the knowledge that you are jiva. You are jiva, and you forgot that you are jiva. By virtue of what? By entanglement, involvement in the body and that which is associated with the body. So entangled and so involved with that of the body and that which is associated with the body, what is forgotten? That you are the jiva is forgotten. So first Shastra has to teach you that you are the jiva so that you get detached from the body. And then they will come and say, no, now don't think you are the jiva. That is also wrong. You are something deeper than that also. For a person who is stuck at the body level, you are the pure consciousness looks like such a vague statement. You will just go over the head. A plus B whole square integration calculus ukati vecha onnume puriyadu. Adi what is happening in that he will not know these equations at all. So first he says come up to this level and then you come up to this level. So when we are talking from the Karma Yogi angle, we talk about Sharira and attachments to the Sharira and all that. And then when we come to the Jiva, Jnani type, we say, drop this notion that you are this Jiva and recognize your true nature. So, Aham Sharira to Aham Jiva to Aham Brahman. Asmina, Tamil solnumna, Asmina, present continuous. Aham Sharira, Asmina, Nam Badiyave da irukken. That is why I think even though the body has changed various shapes and forms, I still feel I am the same, no? Body gundardu, olliardu. Yeah. Healthy argu, unhealthy argu. Disease varudhu, disease varala. Younger irukku, older irukku. But I remains the same. What is that I? The identity remains the same. So, aham sharira asmina, even though the body is going through the changes, my identification makes me to believe that it is the same. Now, first thing they remove is this notion that you are this sharira. Say that you are occupying the sharira and you have to effectively use the sharira. You are occupying the sharira and you have to effectively use the sharira, just as you effectively use the car. And when you use the car, you ensure that the car is cleaned, the oil is changed, the services are done, everything is done. But then you understand that car is for a purpose to be used. I occupy the car. As soon as I reach my destination, I get out of the car. Similarly, the jiva occupies this body. After a while, leaves the body. So first thing they say is, remember that you are the jiva. The remembrance of the jiva itself, in my personal opinion, I would say 60-70% of the sadhana is done. The attachment to the body is so strong. The attachment to the body is so strong. That is why there will be lot of anger for sense control. Mind control is very happy. Everybody will easily agree for controlling the mind, but very few will agree for sense control, not because of the subtlety and all that. They have not yet even moved to the level of the subtlety. What is the subtlety? The subtle body level. Why? Because they are still stuck at the level of the body, means senses. So, at one stage when we are talking to the seeker, now remember the basic formula, you will know the connection. Human beings are of two types: the seekers and the non-seekers. When we say seeker, means seeking the higher. Non-seekers means not seeking the higher, but seeking the lower. Now, of those who seek the lower, there are two types. One who seeks the world without any rules and regulations, in a way that they want, even if it means torturing and killing and causing pain to others. Fulfillment of my raga dvesha is important for me. That is category 1. Category 2 is, no, I fulfill my likes and dislikes, but I will fulfill it within a boundary of discipline. Now, this is also non-seekers only, because they are still seeking the world fulfillment of raga dvesha only. From these two, evolve the third category. What is the third category? They are still a victim of raga dvesha. They are still affected by likes and dislikes and these emotions, but they have changed the direction. They are called karma yogis. They are called karma yogis. And when they do this yajna karma and all that is going to prescribe, we mature into a jnani, means a contemplator, a thinker. Why we say contemplator, thinker is because body can be seen and perceived. Jiva can't be seen and perceived. So much of thinking has to be done again and again and again to even grasp this concept of jiva. And then to that person it says, not even this jiva, get to the original state. So remember human beings as non-seeker 1, non-seeker 2. Seeker 1, seeker 2. Most of the time what happens is this non-seeker 2 is misunderstood as. This non-seeker 2 is the moralist. This non-seeker 2 is an ethical moralist person. And this ethical moralist is misunderstood as a spiritual person most of the time. He says, no, no, no. They are still pursuing likes and dislikes only. The only difference between non-seeker 1 and non-seeker 2 is non-seeker 1 knows no boundaries. Non-seeker 2 says, my fulfillment of likes and dislikes, but I will pursue it within a boundary. Now, this non-seeker 2 is the one who is confused a lot, who gets affected a lot. Why? Because they want to pursue their likes and dislikes. At the same time, they have a boundary, and that boundary comes and creates a lot of chaos in thinking, lot of confusion in thinking. Vedantic knowledge guides them and makes them take a U-turn first. What is the U-turn? From Sharira, understand that you are the Jiva, and then do a lot of Karma Yoga practices, and then mature into a contemplator, thinker. What we mean by Jnani is contemplator, thinker. And the proportion of humanity is, we are not distinguishing as superior or inferior. We are saying these two exist. These two proportions exist. The thinker's proportion is always less. The doer's proportion is always more. Though we can say everybody is thinking, to put it very simple, of those who finish graduation, how many gets into research? Very few. For a thinker, why it is difficult to get into the research? The difficulty of research thinking is what? After spending 2 years, 3 years on something, at the end of the 3rd year, you can come to the understanding that all that you have been doing is completely wrong and start all over again. Now, that the vast majority cannot handle. So what do they need to do? They need to practice Karma Yoga. We are not saying, Vedanta is not saying they are inferior people or lower people. There is a path for liberation for them also. That is Karma Yoga. The small minority is the thinker. And who's the thinker? Three years of experiments, 4 years of experiment. He will understand that all that he has done is completely wrong. He can go to sleep peacefully and wake up in the morning and start all over again with the same enthusiasm. He is the thinker. Yeah. I always used to wonder, average age of Nobel Prize is what? How much time it takes? It takes that much of time to do the research and come up with something. Now, only a small minority can do that. So he says, Jnana Yogena Sankhyanam. For them, the method is different. For them, the method is different. What is the method for them? A method of logic, analysis, and all that. For those who are not ready for that, who are not ready means naturally inclined to that. When we say ready, we can feel as though it is an inferior state. For those who are not naturally inclined to that, like Arjuna type is not naturally inclined to that. though he wants to behave like a researcher, though Arjuna wants to behave like a researcher, thinker, Krishna knows that he is not of that type. So he says, get back to action, get back to action. And Arjuna is getting very irritated. Why are you asking me to come back to? Why are you asking me to come back to action? That too, Arjuna, Gora Karma. Gora Karmani Rana Samudyame, he says. Rana Samudyame na battlefield. Rana Samudyame na battlefield. Battlefield means, what is battlefield? What is battlefield? Pain for everybody. That is battlefield. Pain for everybody. Whether he is the winner or the loser, pain is, that is the word battlefield. Rana Samudyame. That's why they say life is battlefield. There is no winner, there is no loser. Everybody ends up with some kind of a pain or the Asmin Rana Samudyame. I am stuck in this Rana Samudyame. Krishna, I want to get out of it. Why are you asking me to stay in this? He says, Arjuna, you speak like a thinker. You speak like a thinker. Prajnavadamsa bhashase. Ashochanan vasho, verse number 11, chapter 2. Ashochanan vashochastvam prajnavadamsa bhashase. Katasuna katasuscha nanushocanti panditaha. You are talking like a thinker, Arjuna. You are not a thinker. How do we know that you are not a thinker? The thinker will not know grief. Failure will not cause him grief, because he has understood research means, thinking means, thinking means it can go wrong. He has the, we don't say humility, Allah. He has the capacity to accept it and not get dejected by it and start all over again. Arjuna, you are not of that type. If you are of that type, what you would have done? See, in the 13 years of Arjuna would have story, it would be easy a little bit. In the 13 years when they were in the forest, he did 1 year of tapas towards Lord Shiva. And Shiva appeared in front of him as a hunter. Because, see, when you sit and do tapas in the middle of the forest, how he will appear? He will appear as a hunter only, no? So, Shiva appeared as a hunter. Kirata. Kirata means hunter. Sariyana Kradakampa, they say, no? Ipalan the words, Allah, we don't use it at all nowadays. Shiva appears as a Kirata. Kirata means hunter. That is why there is a whole lot of beautiful Sanskrit poetry called Kiratarjuniyam or poetry. There is a beautiful, like Kalidasa's Raghuvansa Mari Kiratarjuniyam or book. Sanskrit lesson la first year la idallam we study. Beautiful discussion. Now, after a while, Arjuna realizes that it is Shiva. Now, when Lord Shiva appears in front of you, you have done tapas and Lord Shiva has appeared in front of you. What will the wise one do? He will immediately prostrate and say, give me moksha, no? He would have immediately prostrated and say, foolishly I was asking for a weapon and all that. Now that you have come, give me. Now, Shiva came and Arjuna asked for a weapon that can kill Karna. It means what? Even when he is in contact with the higher, the focus is still on something lower. Ramakrishna Paramahamsa gives this beautiful example. He says, the mind is like this eagle, like a, not vulture, he says, not eagle. Vulture the scavenger, eagle is not a scavenger, no? Eagle can take a live creature, kill and eat. Vultures don't kill. That's why they are called scavengers. Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, yeah. It took me a while to understand the difference between eagle and vulture. Because Ramakrishna Paramahamsa uses this example of vulture. He says, this mind is like the vulture, he says. Why? It flies so high in the sky. How much ever height it takes, where is its focus? The focus is on the rotten flesh, he says. Mind is like that. How much ever you fly high, you imagine that you are flying high. That's what he says. Prajnavadamsha bhashase. You spoke like a wise man, Arjuna. You spoke like a wise man. But who's a wise man? Who's a thinker? A thinker is one who doesn't get dejected in a crisis. He's a leader. A crisis comes, and where everybody is dejected, that man is not dejected. Where is that energy coming from? Where is the strength coming from? Vairagya, dispassion. It comes from that. It comes from this quality called Vairagya, dispassion. An emotional person will not have this Vairagya. So he gets so involved. Now, what is the method for his evolution? The method for his evolution is, he says, Yajna Karma. Yajna Karma. And when you do this Yajna Karma, yeah, எங்கெங்களோமா சுத்திட்டு அட்லீஸ்ட் முடிக்கும் போதாவது டெக்ஸ்டோட கனெக்ட் பண்ணலாம்னு கனெக்ட் பண்ணிட்டேன். யஜ்ஞ கர்ம ஞான யோகேன சாங்கியானாம் கர்ம யோகேன யோகினாம். Arjuna, you need to do this. You need to do this action. Don't try to escape from action, because if you escape from action, what will you do? What you have escaped from, you will feel guilty. What you have run away from, you will feel guilty. Not only you will feel guilty because you have run away from what you ought to do, wherever you go, you will not be doing the right thing there also. Are you able to follow? Huh? He says, see, where if you're halfway through, you run away, that which you have left halfway through will haunt you till the end. Keeps coming back and haunting you. Feel, oh, I should have done that. I should not be, that the mind keeps going back and haunted by that. Not only haunted by what it has left behind, wherever it is, it would not be doing what it ought to do. To put it very simply, Arjuna, Yajna Karma Grihastha is better than a duplicate sannyasi. What am I saying? To put it in one sentence, to put it in a very, very gross way, to put it in a very simple way, what he is saying is, Yajna Karma Grihastha, Yajna Karma householder is a much better person, has a much better chance for evolution than 21st century God man, he is saying. That's the only thing. Because Arjuna wanted to do that. Krishna, knowing this, he says, Arjuna, don't do this, don't make this mistake. Don't make this mistake. And why Krishna is interfering? Because Sishyasteham Shadimam Twam Prapannam, Arjuna has surrendered. Duryodhana didn't surrender. Yudhishthira didn't surrender. Bhima didn't surrender. Who surrendered? Arjuna surrendered. And to Arjuna who has surrendered, how can he allow him to do the wrong thing? So he will go on and on and on explaining what is the right thing that he has to do. And what is the right thing that he has to do? If you are not qualified, if you are not an adhikari for that, don't go there. If you are not an adhikari, if you are not a qualified, don't go there. For where you are itself, you can evolve. It's not that where you are is a wrong place you are in and that is the right place. What Arjuna is thinking is, he is in a wrong place. Being in a wrong place, how can I grow? I have to go there to grow. Krishna says, no, no, no. Where you are is the place for you, and this is where you need to grow. What does that mean? Practice yajna karma. And what is practicing yajna karma means? 4 stages. First, do karma. Stage number 1 is do karma. Instead of being a parasite on another, do karma. At 50, if I were to ask, at 50, if I were to say, I had a useless father because he didn't leave any estate behind, what am I doing till 50? So first thing he says is, do karma. Second thing is, do karma sincerely, conscientiously. Third thing is, do karma for a paropakara, for a loka sangraha. Fourth stage is, do karma, do it sincerely, conscientiously, do it with paropakara, and remember the divine that is guiding you to do this. Stages he takes us into action. First he says, niyatam kuru. Niyatam kuru na second stage. First he says, karma kuru. Do action. And then he says, niyatam karma kuru. And then he says, this niyatam karma for loka sangraha. Then he says, loka sangraha, vote and department, it will become a social work. Don't stop with that. Take it one step deeper also. Remember the remembrance of the divine. So these 4 steps is what is covered in yajna karma. So when we talk about the higher stage, lower stage is included in that. It is not saying no to the lower. Are you able to follow now? Whenever we say remember the divine and act, what you should remember, these 3 are already included in that. What are the 3? Karma kuru. What is karma kuru means? Action is the insignia of life. You cannot remain inactive even for a split second. Die with your boots on. These are all the knowledge that teaches you karma kuru. Do action. And then they say, don't do it. ஏனோ தானும் பண்ணக்கூடாது இல்லையா? இல்லையா? தமிழ்ல they say no. இங்கிலீஷ்ல they say grumpy face. தமிழ்ல எப்படி சொல்லுவாங்க? மூஞ்சியை தூக்கி வச்சிட்டு பண்ணக்கூடாதுன்னா தூக்கி அங்கேயே வச்சிருக்கிறாங்க. The attitude. There is a frustration. There is an irritation about doing. Still done. Then he says, do, even if you are irritated doing, first to do. அதுதான் faking is, அது என்னது? Some Mahavakya you said yesterday, faking is better than, இல்லையா? அமெரிக்கால அதான் சொல்லி சொல்றாங்க. Do that first. Even if you are irritated doing, first to do. Don't wait for knowledge to come and then start doing. Start doing first. Do first and then move into the sincere doing. Not with a grumpy face, not with a long face. Don't do with all that. Do it cheerfully. And don't do it fake it till you make it. அதான் ராஜவேல் அமெரிக்கால நீங்க தான் கேட்டிருப்பீங்களே. How many times you went fake it till you make it. First is do it. Even when you are doing, there will be an irritation, frustration, long face, grumpiness, pain and all that. Ignore all that and continue to do. The third stage is cheerful doing, joyful doing, obligatory doing. Fourth stage is doing all this not for your own self, for a circle of identification increases. Loka sangraha. Up to this point, everybody comes. Up to this point, world also comes. Vedanta goes to the next step and say, don't stop here. Go to the next layer also. What is the next layer? Remember the remembrance of the divine. And what is the remembrance of the divine means? Whatsoever I do it oblating it to the, I do it sincerely, I do it dedicatedly for the welfare of the Loka Sangraha, and then what I do, remembrance of the divine comes. Now why remembrance of the divine? Loka Sangraha oda nipaatti irukkalame. Then why remembrance of the divine? If I do not bring in the remembrance of the divine, I will become a reformer. The egoistic notion of I am the reformer, I have to change the, illa Modiya patti ellarum tappu tappa nenachiranga. It is my duty that I have to reform everybody to follow Modi, Rajvel. That's not my job. That's not my duty. If I do not bring in divine, what will happen? I will assume that I am born to reform the world. Vivekananda said it so beautifully. God didn't create the world thinking that Vivekananda is needed to make it better. So, remembrance of the divine takes care of the very subtle ego also. What is the subtle ego? I am the doer. What is I am the doer means? I am the reformer, and if I am not there, everybody will go to dogs, and it is my job to do this. He takes that burden on himself. So remembrance of the divine, what it does, removes this ego also. So yajna karma takes care of all these. Because because this doership can come at every stage. The doership can come. Every stage doership can come and agitate and disturb, and makes you get involved in the world. When you are agitated, why we talk about this agitation is because when you are agitated, what happens when you are agitated? When you are agitated, disturbed, what happens? The higher will be forgotten. The mind will gravitate to the lower. That is why when the fellow is stressed, he will say, "Or dam adichittu varampa seriya poidum." He also knows that between the cigarette and stress, there is no connection between smoking and. He also knows that. Or peg potter inniki. Pota naale kalayila fresh ah irukuma. Whenever there is a stress, whenever I am agitated, disturbed, the mind will go for indulgence. That is why we are so careful to say don't get agitated, don't get disturbed, because the mind immediately go for indulgence, and in that indulgence, all the good work that you have done, you undo. All the good work you have done, you keep on undoing that. Therefore, they say practice sense control, practice brahmacharya, practice self-control, so that you don't get agitated. This is how yajna karma comes and talks about the doership at every level. It takes care of the doership at every level, because doership is that which agitates you, and when you are agitated, the tendency is to immediately resort to something to something lower, indulgent. I am so agitated. Let me do upavasa today. Varma. I am so agitated today. Let me practice maunam today. Varma. Whenever the mind is agitated, it tends to go towards the lower, because that agitation becomes a justifiable reason for indulgence. Are you okay? The mental agitation becomes a justifiable reason for indulgence. And what is wrong with indulgence? Raga dvesha increases, punarjarma continues. You continue in the cycle again and again and again, aimlessly, purposelessly. With the last example, I conclude. Ramatirtha gives an example of doership. What is the doership? Ramatirtha gives a beautiful example. A person got into the train and he is carrying the luggage on his head. He is carrying the luggage on his head. The Swami sitting next to him asked him, "Why are you carrying the luggage on your head?" He said, "I don't want to burden the train. As it is, the train is carrying my weight. I don't want the train to carry the burden of the luggage also." Swami said, "Foolish man. Anyway, the train is only carrying you and your luggage. Freedom from doership can be done in two ways. Ignorant way of freedom from doership is this. See, when you carry weight in one shoulder, it pains. And then you shift it to the other shoulder. When you shift it to the other shoulder, there is an immense relief from pain. Have you ever noticed it? There is an immense relief from pain. Very soon, the left shoulder starts paining. Again, what will I do? I have to shift it to the right shoulder. Now, shifting from one shoulder to the other shoulder is not solving the problem. What is solving the problem? Don't drop the action, drop the doership. Don't drop the action, drop the doership. Yajna karma guides us into it. And Yajna karma guides us into it. With this, I conclude for today. And we continue. When you say smoking has nothing to do with stress, in American marijuana is legalized. Since it has medicinal benefits, they claim that calms your mind and everything seems to be slower than the usual pace. Correct. Wherein one is bombarded with a million thoughts. People gravitate to something lower because they feel it's working for them. They feel it is working for them, but what they do, it is like, just now I gave the example, it is like shifting the burden from right shoulder to the left shoulder. When you shift the burden from the right shoulder to the left shoulder, there is an instant relief. There is a very good relief, but what they don't realize is what they brought in as a solution itself is going to turn into another problem. Yeah. That's how it works. With this, conclude for today, and we continue next Sunday. Venkat, அடுத்த வாரமாவது hopefully யஜ்ஞ கர்மாக்குள்ள போயிடுறேன் நான் திருப்பி. கோச்சுக்காதீங்க.